Hi guys, it's Mary McIntyre. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm giving you my review of the Dwarf Mini Smart Telescope. This was the first smart telescope that I'd ever used when Dwarf sent it to me to do a review of it back in January. So I've been playing with this for quite a few months now. So in the video, I will talk you through my opinions of it and show you some of the photographs that Mark and I have taken with it over the last few weeks that we've had it. So this is obviously very compact. It's one of the smallest, if not the smallest, smart scopes on the market. What's actually inside here is a little refractor. So it's a 30mm aperture refractor with 150mm focal length, and that gives you a field of view of 2.45 degrees of sky. And it also has a wide angle camera on here, and that's got a 6.7mm focal length and gives you a field of view of just over 50 degrees. So that's really cool that it's got both in here. The main imaging chip for the telephoto part of this is an IMX662, so it's a 2-megapixel camera. And the great thing about this telescope, it comes with a solar filter, by the way, which is held on magnetically, which is great. So you can image the sun with this. You can also image the moon with this. But for deep sky imaging, there are 2 filters built in. Well, technically 3. There is a darks filter in here so that it can do dark calibration frames and subtract dark signal noise from the instrument. But as well as that, there's an astro filter, which is preferentially boosting wavelengths that will help to give contrast to nebulae and galaxies. But in addition to that, there's a dual band hydrogen alpha O3 filter. So if you are imaging under moonlight, you've still got the option of doing it. So the Dwarf Mini can be used just sat on the ground, but I've got a tripod shoe on here. I find it better using a tripod personally that's like a camera height, purely because we've got hedges and fences and trees around our garden. So if you do this on the ground, you are cutting off quite a big chunk of sky that otherwise would be visible if it was a bit higher up. But if you are somewhere that's quite open, or you're imaging something quite high up, you don't even need a tripod. You could get one of those tiny little floor standing ones, or you could get a smart scope tripod that holds it up a couple of feet. But the weight of this is so light, it's only 840 grams, so you can put it on a really basic camera tripod. Everything in this smart scope is run through the Dwarf Labs app, and that is pretty intuitive to use. When I got this, I was imaging within less than 2 minutes. So when you open the app, I'm not going to do like an in-depth tutorial on how to use the app, but I will pop in a short video showing what the app looks like. But when you turn it on, you connect to the smart scope. Once it's connected, you can then decide from the app what you want to image. So it will have all the camera settings pre-selected. Basically, it does all the thinking for you if you want it to. So you can select solar system and put your solar filter on, or not have the solar filter on and image the moon. So in addition to solar system, you've got the option of doing deep sky. So there's a massive database of objects that are already saved within that. So whichever object you choose deep sky wise from the database, it will already be programmed with which filter is best to use with that. So if it is something that will benefit from the dual band, then it will automatically select the dual band for you. If you are using it just like this, you can run it in Alt-Az mode, and generally the longest exposures then are like between 10 and 15 seconds. And that works really well, actually. And for a complete beginner, it makes this incredibly approachable. You just put it down on the ground or on your tripod. It will basically do a plate solve. It will take a picture of the night sky. It will know what its field of view is. It will recognize that from the star field, and then it will slew to the object that you choose, automatically set the exposure times, and then on the app it will live stack the image. So the longer you're pointing at the image, the more detailed that picture will be. And that is incredibly simple to use for anybody with no prior knowledge of the sky. You don't need to do an align on it. It's battery powered, and the battery will last for about 4 hours, and I have found that to be the case. But there is a USB-C port here that you charge it with. You can actually run it from mains power if you want to go for longer. The advantage of not having a tripod and cables is that this can actually rotate through 360 degrees without any collisions. It's just got complete freedom of movement. And this arm can also go right up beyond the vertical. So it doesn't have that issue that you often have with equatorial mounts of traditional equatorial mounts, where if an object is too high near the zenith, the mount gets itself in a bit of a tangle. So it's really good for that. It means that you've got all of the sky available to you, all the objects available to you. Now, if you are somebody like me that has got 15 years of astrophotography experience and you've done this the traditional way, this now has an equatorial mode in the app as well. So you put it on a tripod, you tilt the tripod so that that is pointing back towards Polaris if you're in the northern hemisphere, or the south celestial pole if you're in the southern hemisphere. And then it will basically do the checks to give you a feedback of how close you are to the polar line. So it's really good. It doesn't give you like a real-time description of what your angles are, but what you do is get it as close as possible. It will take a few pictures and figure out how much you need to adjust it by. So whether you need to rotate it a little bit or tip it a bit more backwards or a bit more upwards. And once you've got that aligned, you've then got the option of doing up to 90-second exposures. Now I've found that, so if you select the wide angle camera, one of the things you can do with that is a daytime time lapse. You can photograph like clouds and the evolution of clouds or ice halos or whatever. But at night, it's got an automatic star trails function. So it will capture star trails for as long as you're pointing. You can point it at Polaris to get circumpolar star trails, or you can point it in any other direction, and it will just live stack those star trails and automatically save a star trails time-lapse video. So it saves you having to go through all of the stacking and saving cumulative files and creating the video manually. So yeah, I'll show you some star trails pictures as well later on. Really easy to use, and as I say, everything's done through the app, which is amazing. Now once you've taken your photographs, you can take them off the Dwarf and process them in the traditional way if you are used to doing that. You can also select to save the individual FITS files and then stack them yourself. But if you don't have any experience with processing, the app has Stellar Studio. So you can upload the images to Stellar Studio, and then it's got these one-click denoising, star correction things, and it's also got a star removal function, all of it done in one click, and that will enhance the data that it's captured. And it does a pretty good job. You'll see in the images that I share with you that the app is actually really good at the one-click processing. So if you are coming from the traditional astrophotography world, that might not appeal to you. But if you are completely new to astrophotography and this is something you've always wanted to get into but didn't know how to start, that's a really good way of starting. So if you are going to be using Stellar Studio and the app is using your Wi-Fi hotspot on your phone or tablet, that means that you are running your instrument on 5G. But you can put this in station mode if you are positioning the telescope somewhere near your router. And that means that your phone will be on the internet and the Dwarf will be on the internet as well, so that you're not caning your data allowance by uploading these big image files. I didn't know about station mode when I first started playing with this. I ended up using 2 gigs of data just uploading pictures to Stellar Studio. So if you are going to use Stellar Studio, do it when you're in the house where you're near the Wi-Fi and you can put it in station mode, and that will preserve your data. I will take you through some of the photographs in a second. I think that's everything to say about it to begin with. I went into this completely with an open mind, and I will give you my final thoughts at the end. So if you select the wide angle camera, one of the things you can do with that is a daytime time lapse. You can photograph like clouds and the evolution of clouds or ice halos or whatever. But at night, it's got an automatic star trails function. So it will capture star trails for as long as you're pointing. You can point it at Polaris to get circumpolar star trails, or you can point it in any other direction, and it will just live stack those star trails and automatically save a star trails time-lapse video. So it saves you having to go through all of the stacking and saving cumulative files and creating the video manually. So yeah, I'll show you some star trails pictures as well later on. So it's just a quick screen record of the app in progress. You just connect the telescope. It will come up with the correct MAC address on there. Then you can go to the live view and see what the telescope is pointing at. You can go to the atlas and have a look and scan around for objects. You can open it up and actually go to the screen that is showing you whether you want to do deep sky, solar system, landscape, star trails, etc., and choose from there. If you go for deep sky, you can have a look at the object database and kind of scan around, either do something in the search box or just have a look at the list of things that it's suggesting that might be good for you to image that night. And the green box is your field of view. So as you pan around on the atlas, you can see how things fit in there. Or as I said, you can go on what's recommended now. It'll give you the altitude of each of these objects, and so it'll give you a whole list of things that are good to image at that moment in time. So there's all of those on there, and you can do the search box as well. Okay, I'm going to take you through some of the photographs that I've taken. I got this in January. It's now almost May, so I've used it quite a lot. Mark's had to play with it as well. So we've amassed quite a collection of photographs, but I'm just going to take you through and just show you what it's capable of doing, really, because there's quite a lot. So I've organized it by type of astronomy object. So we're going to start off with clusters. First of all, the Pleiades. This was one of the first things that I imaged with the Dwarf Mini, and I did this in alt-az mode. So there were some strange kind of stacking artifacts around the outside. This is self-processed, and I haven't done a background extraction, so there is a bit of a color gradient, but for the short exposures and the size of the telescope, like, I would have been so happy with an image like this back when I first started. The Pleiades is my favorite object, and I really like this picture of it. When I processed this data using the Stellar Studio thing, it came out insanely blue. It looked a little bit weird. So this one is self-processed, but it still looked nice the other way, but it was a little bit clipped and a bit too blue for my taste. So and that's saying a lot because I love blue, but this was the result that I got when I processed it myself using Photoshop and my usual processing methods. This is the double cluster, and this is genuinely probably now my favorite picture I've ever taken of the double cluster. I love the star colors. On this particular object, I think the star focus looks really good. That is one thing I've noticed with some images, is that the stars are not quite as pin sharp as I'd maybe like, and that's probably on me. I should go in and check the focus manually just to make sure it's up to par, but this came out really well. I love the different colors. I love the double cluster, and normally it's very difficult to get all of it into a telescope field of view, so it's really nice that you can look at both of them at the same time. Absolutely gorgeous. I genuinely love this picture. I wanted to go through some of the Messier clusters as well. So I've done M36, 37, 38, which are my go-to objects whenever I'm playing with a new telescope visually or photographically. And again, the star colors are pretty. The focus is not too bad on this one. One thing that we've noticed is that there is a little bit of coma aberration around one edge of the camera sensor, but it's not so bad that it's distracting, so you've got to really look for that. So that's M36, M37, which is more orange and more dense, but just gorgeous still. And then this is M38, which almost fills the field of view. And there's another little cluster at the bottom there that I've forgotten the name of off the top of my head. It's a little NGC cluster. But yeah, all three of those Messier clusters, absolutely gorgeous. This is the beehive, and you can't get all of the beehive into this tiny field of view. So I do like this picture. I love the beehive cluster anyway, but it's just another version of it. I've never been able to see a beehive shape with this visually or photographically, but I do really enjoy this picture. On this occasion, some of the brighter stars are a little bit bloated, but you know, again, just remembering this thing's tiny. It's so small. It's not doing a bad job so far on these pictures. This is the only globular cluster picture that I can find. I was sure that I'd imaged M13, but I can't find it. I must have imagined that I'd done it, or imaged it with a different telescope that I'm currently reviewing. But Mark did capture this image of M92, so the field of view of this is really nice for the globs, certainly the bigger globs anyway, because it's not such a wide field of view with this setup that the globs are just a tiny smudge. You can actually see a little bit of the clarity on the outer stars on the globular clusters, so that's really nice. And that was one that we've just taken off the telescope and done a tiny bit of tweaking with. Galaxies, I wanted to have a go at quite a few galaxies while I was playing with this, and again remembering that the field of view of this is fairly large because it's not a particularly big aperture, but the camera sensor is small enough that you can actually see quite a lot of galaxies on your photographs. So Andromeda Galaxy. Now, one thing I will say about this telescope that I prefer over some of the others on the market is that you can select this field of view as being landscape. And coming from a traditional astrophotography angle, I much prefer that over the portrait orientation that some smart scopes have, which is designed for viewing on a phone and sharing to social media apps that usually use a portrait orientation. It's just weird to me. I've never done my astrophotography that way, other than the odd occasion where I'm imaging something that's orientated like this. And this photograph is the one time that I would have liked the field of view to be more in a portrait orientation, just because the alignment of the galaxy was just unfortunate. But Andromeda Galaxy is really big. It's way bigger than several full moons, so you're never going to get all of the detail in with something like this. But really nice detail. You can see the satellite galaxies really well, and yeah, really awesome. And again, I keep saying, imagine as a complete beginner that you can just basically point this and get these pictures. This was in alt-az as well. Most of the pictures I take now are actually in EQ mode because you can do longer exposures, but this was definitely an alt-az picture. This is Bode's Galaxy. Now, interestingly, I did take a picture of M81 and M82, and the raw image was very noisy, which is something that I will say about a lot of the raw images with this setup. They can be incredibly noisy, but the Stellar Studio denoise function does a really good job, and the Stellar Studio processing does a good job. But for some reason, I think again I'd probably done this in alt-az mode, I'm struggling to remember, but when I did the processing in the app, it actually cropped quite a lot around the galaxy, and I actually lost M82. So the original picture has both, but it is very noisy. So I like Bode's Galaxy. It's a really beautiful galaxy, so I'm happy that I've got a cropped version of it. But with the field of view, you can easily get both in. I need to revisit that object and have another go in EQ mode and just make sure that I'm not getting any weird outer edge artifacts to be stacked off. This one blew my mind. M51 is such a small galaxy pair, and I didn't expect to get very much out of this. So this is cropped from the original, but I just love this so much. If you look out here at the interacting galaxy, you've even got wings of material that are coming off there. You can see so much detail, and the color is really nice as well. So this was a Stellar Studio processed one. It smoothed it out really nicely, and there's something so lovely about seeing a small galaxy in a sea of stars. It gives you that sense of context, and for years people referred to galaxies as island. That's what this looks like. It just looks like this floating other world in the middle of a big star field. And I think we're all guilty of just having aperture fever and wanting to get in super close on these objects, and that is awesome, and I do love doing that. Sometimes having that wider view just gives you a completely different feel, and I was particularly impressed with the M51 image because it really is a very small galaxy. M51 also very faint compared to the other galaxies, but it turned out quite nicely. The night that I imaged this, if I remember rightly, again, I was in alt-az mode. It was really poor seeing conditions, a lot of thin cloud, lots of gusty wind, so shorter exposures were better because everything was getting buffeted. And the original image was very, very noisy and the galaxy very, very faint. But processing in Stellar Studio brought that out nicely. Again, some of the brighter stars are a little bit bloated, and but the star color is really nice. I do quite like the way that the colors have been represented on that. So I do really like that picture as well. This is the Leo triplet, plus there is one extra other galaxy in here that I've forgotten the name of. We can see a few little aberrations around the edge on here. And again, the night that I took these pictures, the conditions were really not great, but it just gives you an idea of the field of view there. You can easily fit those three galaxies in. Now, you can just see the rift through the middle of the Hamburger galaxy. Again, it's a small instrument and these are very small galaxies. This image is kind of comparable with what I've got with one of our refractors and a digital SLR, so it's very impressive, really. Just I keep saying it, but I'm just so impressed by what this little scope can do. Nebulae was something else that I was very keen to try, and I'm honestly, again, fairly blown away by what this can do for nebulae. To start off with the Rosette Nebula, Caldwell 50, this only just fits, well, it doesn't actually, there's a little bit of it missing in this field of view because this is a pretty large object, but it almost all fits in. This was done with the dual band filter. When you choose an object from the catalogue of objects, you basically you don't have to tell it what filter to use. It's already pre-programmed with which objects are going to respond better to which filter. So you don't have to think about that, but you can select this if you want to. I have done that, made some decisions to swap filters and got a worse result. So it knows what it's doing with its own filters, basically. So these are, this was a Stellar Studio process, but then I've tweaked the levels and the color saturation a little bit more in post using Fast Tone Image Viewer. Really nice, and you can play with different color channels here because it is a dual band filter. You can do like a Hubble palette rendition of this if you wanted to, but I've just left everything fairly simple just to show you what comes out of the telescope. What you do processing wise is entirely up to you afterwards. The Orion Nebula, Messier 42, this was a really pretty version of it. Now obviously the core is blown here, so the way around that is to do a few other shorter exposures and then merge the two of them, but I just wanted to show you what comes out of the telescope. But there is so much nebula in the main part, but also around the outside. Now there's one of the features that Stellar Studio has that I know isn't going to suit everybody, but it's the star removal one. And I know that a lot of people use StarNet++, and there are some routines in PixInsight that can take stars out. The benefit of taking stars out of a nebula photograph is that when you're then processing it, you can push the nebula detail more without your stars getting really bloated. Generally, people then merge them back in together and keep the stars more understated so they're not dominating, and it's a really useful tool to use because quite often if you kind of push the nebula, the stars end up really prominent, particularly if the nebula lies somewhere near the band of the Milky Way where there are just trillions of stars and they all really get in the way. But with one click in this app, you can, in Stellar Studio, you can remove the stars, and I love this. I've never been the biggest fan of star-free nebulae before, but it really makes you see the structure of the nebula in a different way. I would never just have this as my go-to for all my processing, but it's been a really interesting exercise to play around with the star removal. This was the Heart Nebula, another nebula that's a little bit too big to fit in just the single field of view with the app. And this is an example of where there are a lot of stars that are there. So I did actually do some, there's an action in Photoshop for the RC Astro tools that I bought years ago, over a decade ago actually. And that is make stars smaller, the action is called. If you do it too many times, you end up with weird pixely artifacts in there. But
it actually works really, really well to kind of keep things in check to a degree. But this, it was struggling to really pull out too much detail without the stars dominating quite a lot. So the star removal just absolutely worked its magic. It really is phenomenal. I don't know how it's doing it, but I love this. I actually really love this because you can now see more of the structure of the nebula. Now, the background is blotchy. There is no doubt about it. There is some colour blotchiness there. There is also noise that still remains even after the denoising and star removal, etc. But just in general, just a quick glance at this and seeing how much nebulosity is there, just amazing. This is the Sol Nebula, which is located very close to the Heart Nebula. It's also sometimes called the Baby Nebula because it does look a little bit like a fetus. Pretty grim, a very demonic red one at that. But that's another one that has a lot of stars in the foreground. But if you take them out, you can see there's a very slightly different crop on there, hence why it looked like it had jumped a little bit. So Mark and I have spent a considerable amount of time really studying the images that Stellar Studio are putting out, because I know some people are a bit skeptical that some of the automatic routines are actually generating data that isn't in the original. With the 3 months that we've had this telescope, we've not been able to find anything that really looks like that is happening. I know it's certainly the case with some phones that have got a super duper digital zoom. You point it at the moon, zoom in, and you can see the point where the AI takes over and is just generating a moon photograph and overlaying it on your image. We just can't see any evidence that that's going on, and we wanted to look at that because I know it is something that some rightly people are a little bit skeptical about. But quite honestly, smart telescopes have been like a huge revolution in astronomy, and if it ever came out that that's what they were doing, nobody would ever buy that smart scope again. So I don't think that's what is going on here. I have no idea how their processing brings out an image that is this good with the raw data that it's got, but I don't believe that it's generative, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really like this picture. Again, just seeing all that nebula structure without the stars was just awesome. This is the Tadpole Nebula. So you can't really see the tadpoles unless you zoom in, but there they are, these little wiggly dudes here. Again, not enough data really for this object. It's quite a faint nebula, but it was good fun to have a go at it. Definitely some bloating on the stars on this one. The star focus is not particularly great on this particular nebula picture. Go back, if I just go back to the wide field. No, it won't let me go back. Okay, so we just a couple of nights ago had a go at the Jellyfish Nebula. I don't have the version of this with the stars. We cleared down the memory, the disk was full on the Dwarf, and I deleted a load of stuff, Mark deleted a load of stuff, and then I realized I didn't have quite everything that I wanted, so I don't think I actually have the starry version of this, but I really like the Jellyfish Nebula photo. It's a faint nebula, and sky conditions were really not that great that night, so really happy that I got it at all. And there's also lots of background nebulosity. Yes, there is splotchiness in the background, like there's no getting away from that, but still very impressive for its size again. So this photograph is the Bubble Nebula. So the Bubble Nebula is very small and very faint, and the bubble part of it is almost impossible to see at this scale. But in addition to that, we've got the Northern Lagoon up on the top right, and we've got the Cassiopeia salt and pepper cluster at the top, sometimes known as the Scorpion cluster. So it's a really nice view there. Nowhere near enough data here. I had to pack up and go to bed. There was cloud coming over. I really could have done with at least another couple of hours on this. But if I zoom in, you can just see the bubble there. It's a tough object for this telescope, for this field of view and for that camera sensor, but the bubble is there, and I do believe that with more data it will come out more. So there's M52, the salt and pepper cluster, and then the Northern Lagoon, which actually looks like a Balrog from Lord of the Rings. It's got those eyes and a big red head, and to me that looks like a Balrog. I really like that. And it's interesting because I've been doing astrophotography, as I said, for like 15 years now. I'm noticing deep sky objects in these pictures that I've never noticed before. I'd never even heard of the Northern Lagoon Nebula. I'd never really took a massive amount of notice really of M52 and what a gorgeous cluster that is. And so the Smart Scope is teaching me new objects that I was not previously aware of. So I'm really happy that I'm getting that out of it as well. It's awesome. We also have the starless version of the Bubble Nebula here, and if I zoom in on that, you can see the stars have been removed there, so the eyes have gone from my Balrog, but you can see way more structure in the nebula there, and it's the same in the bubble there. It's really cool. So we have imaged that with our Ritchie-Chrétien telescope before now. That was actually one of the images that was used on the Wildsmith Skin limited edition Christmas gift set packaging a few years ago. You may remember I did a video about it. So yeah, this is just a different take on it. So yeah, awesome. This is the Crab Nebula. I did not have any expectation that this telescope would be able to get pictures of this. It is a very faint, very small object, and it's very, very small, but there are details within there, all of those little ribbons of structure. It's a supernova remnant in Taurus, and I've never imaged it before, and now I have, and I'm really happy with it. It's just didn't expect the telescope to handle this object at all, but it did. It's cool. Now, that's the deep sky stuff. This telescope obviously has the ability to do solar system stuff as well. And I actually really like the fact that rather than taking single shots, you can actually set it up to do a live stack on solar system objects as well. So this is some sunspots. This is the whole disk of the sun using the solar filter that came with the telescope. That was from the 4th of February 2026. So there were some lovely sunspots on display there. And weirdly, this looks like sunspots in a very similar position, but this was the 25th of April 2026. This was over the weekend. Mark actually took this with loads of sunspots again on the sun there. So yeah, really, really cool to have that option that just basically in the box you've got the solar filter. You can just pop that on and take pictures of the sun on the go wherever you are. Does a stack so that you get in way more detail, less noise, sharper, crisper image at the end of it. Absolutely brilliant. Like so much better than my early photographs that I took with my homemade solar filter on my big refractor. So yeah, absolutely amazing. I've done quite a lot of lunar imaging with it. So I've not put the dates on these. I'm just showing you a few different moon phases. Now, the live stacked image of the moon when it came off the dwarf was very dark and looked like it had been over sharpened. But once I did a linear stretch on it, suddenly it didn't look like that. It's just something about the way that it's stacked has made it look really dark and crispy, but a little bit of a stretch and it looked absolutely bob on. It didn't need very much else, just a quick linear stretch and tiny bit more denoising, and you had a decent moon picture. Really impressed with what it can do on the moon. And we have the eyes of Clavius here. The previous picture there was actually the lunar X in one of them. We've got the jeweled handle up here around Sinus Iridum, beautiful mountain ranges, sun rising over Plato. Now, it's certainly true that these images come off the telescope fairly low resolution, very small file size, and if you crop it's quite pixely. So I would say that this is a really good option for doing a whole disk of a moon or the sun. When it comes to cropping and zooming in, you can struggle a little bit with that because it just doesn't have the resolution to take doing up close pictures of craters. But it's doing a decent job of the full disk. I'm really impressed with what it's done. I love these pictures. Like, they're so cool. Now, Jupiter is very, very small on the field of view with this telescope, so I've not as yet figured out a way of trying to get any surface detail. There was one picture where I got the hint of one of the cloud belts, but it was a bit of a mess, to be honest. But one thing you can certainly do is take a picture of Jupiter and four of the Galilean moons, all four Galilean moons, I should say, if they're on show at the time. Now, I did mention that this has a wide field camera as well. and this is the first Star Trails image that I did with it. There is a lot of vignetting here and obviously an obligatory aircraft trail, but for the fact that you've got it all in one thing without having to worry about taking a separate camera to do your star trails, it gives you the option of being able to just at least capture some star trails. And actually Mark did another star trail the other night where the vignetting was nowhere near as bad, so I don't know whether it was some light pollution getting in somewhere. I'm not quite sure why my star trails look very vignetted but Mark's didn't. But the other thing the Dwarf does automatically with every star trails that you make is to make a star trails time-lapse video, which is awesome. So this one, Mark did this with a crescent moon, so there's a reflection of the moon here, there's a lens reflection of the moon there, and there's also a lens reflection of the moon moving upwards, which is something we see quite a lot in the meteor network when there's a bright fireball. So there's a whole load of different reflections going on, and then thin cloud came across, so you can actually see the corona moving with the moon as that time lapse goes on. So, and there's very little vignetting in this video. I can't see anything like the kind of vignetting that I had when I did the star trails. So absolutely brilliant that you do have that option. There is some star color there. You can put as much foreground in as you want with that. Yeah, it's really smart. It doesn't seem to have blurred the foreground too much. Really, really cool. Good option. Now you can use the wide field camera in the daytime as well. So this is a cloud time lapse that Mark shot over the weekend, which is absolutely brilliant. So if you're on mains power, you can keep going with this for as long as you want. But seeing those bubbly white clouds moving across against the landscape and the tree and the blossom, absolutely brilliant. So this camera is definitely better in daylight. The sensor does struggle a bit with noise and granularity in low light, so you're never going to get like a super clarity result when you're doing nightscape stuff, but you can do nightscape videos with it, no doubt at all. I just love this cloud time lapse. It's amazing. And the fact that it can do it all for you without you then having to go on and like just make the video or save the pictures and then turn them into a video, then format the video to be compatible with your movie maker software. It's all just done for you. It's amazing. I love cloud time lapses. I could watch them all day long. So yeah, that's a really good option for this. So if you do like doing terrestrial observing, you can use both the telephoto and the wide field lens in daylight. So just a reminder of how small this is. This is it compared to a pint glass. And when you see it as small as this and see those pictures, I did not expect that it was going to perform the way that it did in those pictures. So one thing that you might be interested in is this question of, can you save the individual sub exposures and stack and process them yourself? That's a question that comes up a lot from people that are traditional astrophotographers who are dabbling with smart scopes. The answer is yes, with a huge but, and there's a couple of reasons for that but. First of all, the individual sub exposures are very dark. The exposures, even in EQ mode, are not particularly long, and there are lots and lots and lots of them. So there was one object, a nebula, that I'd photographed for a few hours. There was something like 760 individual subs that we were trying to stack. The process was incredibly slow, and part of the reason for that is that the individual subs are so dark. Also, the telescope itself can do the stacking and everything is color. But if you do the stacking yourself, there's an issue with one of the file formats somewhere that means that your images are grayscale. So when you stack them, you end up with a black and white image. And there doesn't seem to be any way of fixing that. It seems to be an issue either with the TIFF header or the FITS header. I can't remember which it is. But you do have the option to save FITS files. They're about 5 megabytes each, but they're uncompressed. But they are so dark, and when I say dark, I mean when you look at them on screen, they just look like a dark calibration frame. So normally when you do a level stretch, you would pull this slider on the right here and try and get it so that your data peak is spread out across the whole graph. Basically, the data peak on this is 1 pixel wide. It is right over to the far left side, almost where the black point is, and it's literally 1 pixel. So in order to get anything to show up, like you can see here just how small that data band is, normally this would look something like that, and you would move your sliders so that the black point and the white point span the graph where all your data is on that curve. This is just basically a 1 or 2 pixel tall peak right over on the shadow side. But if you do get that slider there and drag it all the way across, you can see my texture here because I haven't debayed this, so this is just a screenshot of my processing software. This is one of my M101 pictures, and if you drag those sliders right across, you can see the stars and you can see the galaxy. However, Deep Sky Stacker will think that they're too dark to stack them. AstroPixel Processor handles them better, but Deep Sky Stacker is the free software that most people use. But Deep Sky Stacker, my husband is on the groups, the support groups.io for Deep Sky Stacker group, and basically he spoke to the guys that write the software about this, and they've put in a fix for it. So the latest edition of Deep Sky Stacker, version 6.1.4, it's still in beta at the moment, but they've actually changed a setting to allow SmartScope stuff to be stacked more easily. But one thing you do have to do is actually set your brightness with the dwarf data. At least you have to set your brightness to 4.5 prior to stacking, so it's pre-stretching everything, and then Deep Sky Stacker can find the stars and anchor on them and stack on them. So without doing that first, Deep Sky Stacker just does not want to know. Even if you do this, it can take several hours to do the stacking because there are usually hundreds and hundreds of frames. And when we did manage to get it to stack, it was almost a full day of work, loads of denoising, lots of playing around in PixInsight, and the end result was not as good as the one click that you can get in Stellar Studio. The detail is there. You can see that the detail matches up with what's in the Stellar Studio pictures, but they're just not quite as good. I've got no idea what their processing routines are, but honestly, it just wasn't worth the hassle. If I want to do conventional imaging, I will use my equatorial mount and my conventional imaging rig. If I want to start messing around with sub images and all that stuff, I will just do it the conventional way. The whole point of this telescope is that you can just sit it out and let it do its thing, and that's its beauty. So
Okay, so just some final thoughts. I hope that seeing the photographs helped you make an informed decision on whether this is something you think would work for you. Will this replace my conventional telescope and mount rig for deep sky imaging or up close moon crater pictures? No, it absolutely won't, but there's definitely a place in my life for this telescope. The fact that you've got a telescope, two cameras, wide field and telescopic. You've got a mount that can go to, that can slew, that can track, that's got a massive database of objects in it. And it's got two different filters in here as well that can be automatically applied. It can be used in alt-az mode or EQ mode. So quick and easy to set up. The app is fairly intuitive to get going if you've never done astrophotography before, but if you have done it, there are a few nice features in there that can just make things a little bit better. It's frustrating to me that, first of all, there is quite a lot of noise, but that can be processed out. More annoying is that the individual subs are so dark, and it is just, like I just said, is an absolute nightmare to stack them yourself. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that for the things that I want to get really involved up to my armpits in stacking and processing, I will use my conventional imaging rig. For convenience factor, there will be times where there's something I just want some pictures of. Let this do it. Just let this do the stacking and all of that stuff. Then you can get the pictures off. If you want to use Stellar Studio and do some in-app stacking, processing rather, then absolutely go for it and do that. But you can process the images that have been stacked and not touched. So it does give you the option for both. But honestly, for its size and price point, I think it's punching very, very hard above its weight. It's very, very impressive. It's great that you've got the convenience of being able to image star trails, cloud time lapses, the sun, the moon, and then some deep sky stuff with the telescope after dark, all in one little thing. Like if you're going on holiday and you want to do a bit of astrophotography while you're there, this is everything. This and a power cable, like it's everything that you would need to do some astrophotography while you're away without lugging all the expensive heavy stuff with you. So I just think it's awesome. And I'm so grateful that I now get to keep this and play with it some more and keep testing it out and seeing how to improve things. So yeah, it's annoying also that there are some issues with star bloating and the autofocus not quite being on point every time. But for the most part, the fact that this can do most of it autonomously and it does a decent job most of the time. So yeah, there are other smart scopes on the market that give you higher res photos than this. Your conventional imaging rig will give you higher res photos than this, but for its size and convenience and how lightweight it is, I still honestly, looking at those photographs, can't believe that this did that. It's wild. It's absolutely wild to me that this did that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's a long one because I kind of went into detail on those photos, but I really wanted to show you what I've done with this telescope since I got it and just give you a good feel for what it's capable of. And I'm sure it's capable of much more that I haven't even explored yet. So I'm looking forward to getting better acquainted with the advanced features as time goes on. So yeah, looking forward to getting this on some of the deep sky objects around the Milky Way as that gets higher in the sky over the coming weeks. And yeah, I'm in love with this little guy. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we have this now. So thank you so much to Dwarf Labs for letting me play with this. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't think I'd ever be a smart scope convert, but this has made me realise that there's definitely a place in my world for a smart telescope, and yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.